Hello my friends, today we're going to make a faux Polaroid card using my scraps and colored pencils. Today I have an old stamp I've had for ages, and this is called Susie's Daisy. It's from Rubber Stampede. It's really old. It's a stamp that I just couldn't get rid of, so I'm going to use it today. So let's get started. I'm just going to stamp it on some white scrap piece of cardstock here with StazOn ink, and it has this little trademark little mark on the rubber here, so I'm just going to take a baby wipe and wipe the ink off of that. Okay, and then I'm going to stamp straight up and down, and again my StazOn ink is really juicy because I just re-inked it, so I'm going to press gently so it doesn't smear. And that's fine. It's a little, I missed a few spots. That's just because I was afraid of smearing it. So that's fine. So on this stamp, you see the image here is colored. So I kind of use that as a guide for coloring. So I'm going to color this image with my colored pencils and kind of keep it up here as a guide. And I just have my cheap, again, color pencils that I got for like $2. And I'm just going to use my light colors first, and then go back with the darker color and just add a few shadows. And that's all I'm going to do here. And I'm going to get the darker purple and then just go over where there might be some shadows. And then if you want to go back with your lighter color again, just to blend it a little bit. Okay, and then again go back and then darker pink color, and towards the center of the flower just color that. Okay, and then just one more time with the lighter pink. Okay. So I hope you can see what we've got there so far. So I'm just going to keep coloring and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have it colored, so you can see that here. And now we're going to make the faux Polaroid before we go any further. And so like I said, I was using scraps, so this is a non-standard card. This is 4x4. And then this is just a piece smaller than that, maybe 3.5 inches wide by 4. And then again, this is just a scrap piece of some natural cardstock. And so I'm just going to use my ruler to make the Polaroid. I'm just going to measure in 1/4 inch and just give myself a mark, and then I'm going to measure across. So since my card is a 4, I know I want it smaller than 4, so I'm thinking maybe 3 inches, and then I'll go in 1/4 from that 3-inch mark. So I'll cut it at 3 inches. So my Polaroid will be 3 inches wide. Okay, so I'm going to go down below, and again this is a scrap piece, so it's 4 inches tall, so I know I'm going to cut off a little bit more. So I'm just going to mark off 1/4 inch. Again, that's where I'm going to cut it. And then since the bottom of the Polaroid is usually taller, I'm going to measure up maybe 3/4 inch. Maybe an inch. I'll measure up an inch. Okay, so I'm going to go over here again, mark my 3-inch mark, which is where I'm going to cut, and then measure in 1/4, and then from that mark, measure up 1 inch. And all these pencil marks will be erased. So I'm sorry, I'm going to measure up 1/4, and then 1 inch from that. Okay, so I'm just going to connect these marks and make a box that I'm going to cut out. Oh, I forgot to measure in this way. From this bottom edge, another 1/4. And then I forgot here also, sorry, measure down 1/4. So you're basically making a 1/4 inch frame, which is where you're going to cut out to make your Polaroid. Okay, so all these lines will be the back, so you don't have to worry about erasing them unless you really want to erase them. I think I mismeasured there. Okay, so you should have something like this, and this portion is what we're going to cut out, so that'll be your Polaroid, and then I'm going to cut this at this point and at that point to make it the right size for my card. So I'm going to cut that first at the 3-inch mark with my paper trimmer. Okay, then I'm going to cut up the first 1/4 inch to make it the right height. Okay, so now I have this, which is my basic Polaroid shape, and now I'm just going to use my hobby blade and cut this out, this square out. So stop at the intersecting points. So you're making your frame. So it should come right out. There we go. Okay, and so now you have a Polaroid frame, which now my colored image will fit in there. So that's why I couldn't cut it yet, because I had to see what my frame is going to look like. So I'm going to cut off a little bit of her feet because I misstamped that anyway, and it'll look like she's fitting right into the picture. Okay, so now that I have my Polaroid frame, I'm going to lightly mark the outermost portion and just give myself a little bit of space to adhere so I know where to cut. And then again, before I cut, I'm going to use my distress tool and distress ink. This is tea dye ink. And I'm going to add some ink around the edges of this. So I'm just going to lightly distress the edges. Still learning how to use this blender tool very well without getting these harsh square lines, but I'll get better. Okay, so now I just went around the edges so that my image is somewhat highlighted. It's the focal point. Okay, now I'm going to trim it down. Okay, and so that should fit nicely in my frame without seeing any of the edges. Okay, and then just to touch up the frame itself, I'm going to use Vintage Photo Distress Ink and the blending tool as well, and just ink up all the edges. So the outside and the inside of the frame. Okay, and now I'm going to take my multi-purpose glue and just add a little bit of adhesive to the outside edge of my focal point, and then just get it right where I want it. Not perfectly center. I like it off a little bit. Okay, so there's our main focal point. Okay, so now I have my Polaroid done. I'm going to embellish, so I'm going to use some red baker's twine. This is from Stampin' Up. And I'm just going to wrap it around twice and then tie a little bow. And then I have this small little paper flower. It's from this little floral embellishment container. I'm going to adhere that to the middle of that bow with some of my multi-purpose glue here. I'm going to add a pearl. This is my little basic pearls from Stampin' Up. So I'm using the smallest one, and I'm just going to stick that there right in the middle of that flower. And now I'm just going to adhere this to my card. So again, here's my card base. Okay, now that I have that on my card base, I just need to adhere our little Polaroid onto the card, and I'm going to have it tilted just a little bit. So I'm going to again use my multi-glue. Okay, and then for the sentiment, I'm just going to hand write it in the bottom corner here. I'm just going to write thank you.